I am excited to introduce you to four of my friends. The first one is Wendy Foursquare, who's the campus pastor at Bakersfield, California, doing an incredible job. And she's going to be talking about welcoming people to her table. Would you welcome Wendy?
Well, good morning, Connection. How are you doing? Good? How many of you would say that you are foodies in the house? Any foodies in the house? You're instantly my people, like we are of the same tribe. When I was asked this question, what is the one thing I would share, it would be this. Pastor, leader, never stop telling your God story. Never stop telling your personal God story. My family and I, we are self-proclaimed foodies, and so we have been known to travel ridiculously long distances in the search for incredible food. This happened just here on this trip. In fact, my husband and I ended up walking several miles yesterday in bad shoes for breakfast. And so I came across this bakery called Porto's in California, and I gotta tell you, yes, there's Porto's fans, I love it. So when I came across this, I had to share the good news with my husband and my kids. So we loaded up. I've got 3 children, 1 husband, and we went on the trek to Porto's. I gotta tell you though, it is not a regular bakery. If you've never been, you have never experienced the culinary experience that is Porto's. So we showed up, it begins in the parking lot. It is a zoo of cars. They are zipping from here to there and everywhere. There's parking attendants issuing numbers. It is a madhouse. Eventually you find yourself in a stall. And then you make your way into the bakery. When you open the doors, you are greeted with a swooshing aroma of bakery goodness. I'm convinced it's a little bit of what heaven will be like. And I gotta tell you, it's like you have been transported into smell-o-vision. Everything comes alive by the way that it smells. And then it's like a cultural melting pot of people. There's people everywhere. It's like a sea of people. And I began to make my way into this bakery, and it's like a well-functioning beehive. It is so fast, it's high energy, it's a cultural melting pot. And as I began to make my way, I noticed that there were women that were fancily dressed, and they had big fancy cakes heading to celebrations. And there was men lining up the side of the cafe, drinking espressos and playing dominoes, wasting away the afternoon. And as I realized that in the sea of people, there's actually a line, we made our way to the end. And as I was in this line, I began to notice that with every person that approached the counter, there was this pressure that began to build inside me because they were ordering in this fast-paced, super efficient Spanish and English blend dialect. And I began to think, oh my goodness, am I gonna order in Spanish? Am I gonna order in English? What are those little pastries in the counter called? I don't have a clue. And I began to get a little bit stressed out. And as I approached it was almost my turn. In that moment, I felt like God spoke to my heart. Wendy, is this how people feel when they enter your church? I knew I was an outsider. I knew I had found myself in a place that I didn't belong, a place that I didn't know, and in a culture that I didn't understand. My heart broke. In that moment, I began to have something that was impressed onto my soul that I began to think, I never, ever wanted someone to make their way onto one of our campuses, into our church ever, and not feel welcomed home. It's become a mantra and a theme that we speak of often. You see, I'm well acclimated with being an outsider. I've been raised in Bakersfield, California. You pass through Bakersfield on your way to San Francisco or down to LA, you don't ever stop in Bakersfield. I'm very appreciative to Pastor Ted Vale, who showed a picture of my homeland. I began to think, oh, that's fantastic. You see, I was the first and only child born to 2 Cuban political immigrant refugees. I was raised by my great-grandmother who only spoke a very fast-paced, thick Cuban dialect Spanish. So from the way I look to the Spanish that I knew, I didn't quite ever fit in. I was never quite one of them, and the them was always shifting. I'm well acclimated with what it's like to be an outsider. And I gotta tell you, standing in that bakery, a place that I've come to love and I frequent often, a place that we've made so many memories at, I was acutely aware of how people who are far from God feel when they take that first giant, courageous step to make their way into one of our churches. They feel like an outsider. It takes so much courage to ever make your way into the door. I hear people tell me all the time, I'm so scared to go in because the building might burn down. Y'all, this is our mission. This is our story. We have been entrusted to tell the God story of our lives. Luke 15, Jesus tells 3 pictures of a lost sheep, a lost coin, and a lost son. And at the end of them, you know what's interesting to me, that the Bible tells us that there was a giant celebration when the sheep, the coin, and the son were found. Every single time. heaven throws this outrageous, outlandish, over the top, put Hollywood to shame kind of a party when even one soul comes to know the Father. People who are far from God really, really matter to the heart of the Father, and because they matter to him, they should matter to us. Pastor, leader, never lose touch with your God story. We have been entrusted to build the house of God and to make the bride of Jesus breathtaking, to make her welcoming, to make her inviting, to make her a place that is so attractive that people who are far from God are drawn into the house of God because there's safety, there's refuge, there's love, there's acceptance, there's forgiveness and redemption. And we've been entrusted to tell that story. We get to tell the God story, to tell people that there is a God in heaven who loves them, who is for them, who loves them and has sent their son, Jesus, to die on behalf of them, to give them a plan for redemption and a life of freedom. We get to tell that story. So, Pastor, would you tell that story, and would you tell it well, tell it with all conviction in your heart, pour your heart out every single week doing that, because it's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary story. The moment that God intersects your life to people who are far from God, that's miraculous. The fact that God would speak to us, the fact that God would share secrets with us, the greatest story ever told has been entrusted to our hands. So may you tell it, and may you tell it well, and may you glorify God in doing so.